Hello! If you clicked on this video, you're probably wondering, how do I get started with developing apps on iOS? Well, let's get started and have a look at some of the best tools for creating apps for iOS, Mac, and anything else on the Apple ecosystem like watches, Vision Pro, and so on. So first of all, what we'll have a look at is Xcode. Xcode is the official IDE by Apple, and it's used for making iOS, macOS, watchOS, visionOS, and anything else within Apple. It's a pretty good uh, development environment, not as good as some of the other ones like Visual Studio or VS Code, but it's very good for the purposes of making apps for the Apple ecosystem. And it makes it very easy for targeting lots of different environments and making sure you can develop one code base for all of the different possible targets that you can have in the Apple ecosystem. It's a powerful code editor. It's got good debugger and a pretty nice looking UI. Sometimes it can be hard to navigate, but once you get used to it, it's pretty good. It uses Swift and Objective-C, but Objective-C is basically going away, so I'd recommend just using and sticking to Swift. It's got an integrated iOS simulator for testing, which is amazing. It makes it really easy. And if you come from the Android world, back in the day, it was really difficult to actually test your app on a simulator on Android, maybe 5 to 10 years ago. But Xcode has always been really easy to do. And it's got seamless integration for deployments to physical devices and even over the air deployments. So you can select your device that you've got, your personal iPhone or iPad, and you don't even have to connect it with a wire. It can just transfer the app onto there, and you can start testing, debugging, and putting breakpoints in and everything like that. You can also send apps directly to TestFlight or iTunes Connect, and straight away, send the app to your testers or directly to Apple to start proving. It's also got built-in Git support for version control, which is amazing. So yeah, it basically has everything you need to get started with making apps for iOS. And it also has really neat implementation for documentation, so you can check different classes and methods and see what they do and how they do it and how to implement them, which is amazing. And more recently, they've actually added in AI support for auto-completion. It's okay. It's not as good as something like Copilot, but it doesn't require internet, so it, take it or leave it. Next up is React Native. React Native is a cross-platform framework by Meta or Facebook, whatever you prefer, and it uses TypeScript to create cross-platform applications, so you can create for both Android and iOS. It has built-in native components for performance, when you're using the shared library code, it actually then compiles to native components for better performance. And yeah, it's a large ecosystem of reusable libraries, which is great. It has lots of different pre-built-in components for buttons and things that are very standard across lots of different apps. It's got hot reloading for fast development cycles, which helps make sure your app is testable a lot easier, and it's ideal for web devs moving into mobile apps because it uses web programming languages like JavaScript and TypeScript. And if you already work with React or Angular or one of those TypeScript frameworks, then you will fit right into React Native, as it uses a lot of very similar principles. And yeah, it's compatible with native modules via bridging, which is also really good. Third is Flutter, and I've got to be honest, I've put this on the list, but I don't have a lot of experience with Flutter personally. I've never actually personally used it, but I've heard a lot of good things about Flutter from other developers who are trying to make apps for different platforms in one code base. So again, it's a cross-platform UI toolkit by Google. It uses the Dart programming language to build iOS and Android apps from a single code base, which is great. It has hot reload for fast UI iterations, rich widget library for beautiful UIs, and again, it has lots of different components, shared components that are just common between different apps. It's got great performance built off of the back of Dart, which is really good, compiles to native ARM code, which is also really good for the performance of your app. And wide plugin ecosystem, including camera, maps, and payments, which is very underrated because those things are actually very hard to work with if you're not developing directly to native code. Now, once you've implemented your app with your chosen framework or programming language, you're probably going to want to monetize it. And monetization is something that probably sounds easy, but it's actually really difficult for some reason, especially if you have an app across different platforms. So let's say you have an iOS, Android, and a web application, then you're going to struggle to sync the different subscriptions if you have a subscription based or in-app purchases between all the different platforms. And an easy way to do this is using RevenueCat. So it simplifies the in-app purchases and subscriptions, which is great. And it handles the billing logic across iOS, Android, and web, which is actually really good and useful. So you can create different paywalls for the different environments and then sync all of those different subscriptions across the different platforms. And it's also free to begin with until you start making $2,500 of recurring revenue a month. And at that point, it charges you 1% for all your annual recurring revenue. It's got real-time analytics of customer insight, which is very useful. So you can see exactly when someone subscribes, when someone unsubscribes, which is very useful for figuring out stuff like churn. That data usually comes into places like Google Play or iTunes Connect, but it's a little bit delayed by a day maybe, whereas this is real time and it's really good. It's got easy integration with Stripe and Apple Pay Store, which is great. And most recently, if you've been following the news, in the US, they've actually told Apple that they have to allow apps to be able to make purchases outside of the Apple Store. So you can actually send people to the web in order to subscribe, and therefore you don't have to pay the 30% commission to Apple. And RevenueCat implemented a way of doing this really easy for the user, so that the user doesn't have to do anything cumbersome or weird. It's just an extra button on your paywall that redirects them to the web and lets people subscribe, and you circumvent the 30% tax from Apple, which is great. And they implemented that literally on the day that the US government announced those changes. And it's got support for multiple pricing models and entitlements, which is really useful if you have different types of pricing models in different countries and so on. And it's ideal for managing paywalls and subscription tiers, which again is really underrated because you can actually change and test different paywalls on the fly without having to submit a new build to Apple, which is very useful because usually it takes about 2 days or so for Apple to approve a new build. And if you are new to programming and you don't know where to get started with making iOS apps, I would recommend looking at Swift Playgrounds, which is an app in the Apple App Store for iPad. And what it does is it just teaches you Swift or programming in general, depending on how basic you want to go and how new you are to programming. So if you're very new to programming, you want to get some very basic understanding of how programming works, then Swift Playgrounds has some little tutorials to get you started. And it also has some basic tutorials to get you started with Swift, the programming language itself. So it's interactive and beginner friendly, and it runs on the iPad and also the Mac OS actually, which I forgot to mention. You can run this on the Mac, you don't need an iPad. But the reason why I mentioned the iPad is because it's a low barrier for learning. You can just do it in bed or something like that. It's also great for kids if you want to get your kid to learn how to code. And it supports SwiftUI and UIKit for preview, which is great. And you can actually run the apps locally on your device, which is pretty crazy. You can create code on your iPad, run it on your iPad, and view the app that you've created on your iPad. And to top it all off, you can then export that code to Xcode on your Mac for a full development environment. So you can, in theory, start an app on your iPad, transfer it to your Mac, finish it up with some of the more technical bits that you can't do on your iPad because of screen limitations, and then deploy it to the App Store, iTunes Connect, and get it distributed. You can also, which is very crazy, actually code the entire app on Swift Playgrounds, and from Swift Playgrounds directly send it to iTunes Connect and have it available in the App Store. So you don't even need a Mac. You can just code on your iPad, which is pretty amazing, especially if you're a beginner and you want to get started and you want to try stuff out. It's absolutely amazing. And on the topic of testing your app, we have to mention simulators. So simulators are essentially virtual machines which run your application, which run a device on your computer. So in the screenshot here, you can see it's an iPhone 11 that's running iOS 16.2, and that is a simulation of an iPhone on your Mac. So don't confuse it with an actual virtual machine, which is kind of how Android tends to do it. They tend to run an actual virtual machine of a device, which is actually closer to a real device, whereas a simulator, it just simulates an iPhone. So bear that in mind, that there are some weirdnesses and differences. For most use cases, you won't see any difference at all. It will be exactly like using it on your physical device. However, some things don't work on a simulator that you might think. It emulates different iOS devices and screen sizes, so you can emulate an iPad, an iPhone, an Apple Watch, and Vision Pro, which is great for quick iterations and UI testing. And it supports location, gestures, and background mode, so you can test lots of different stuff. You can also run an iPhone and an Apple Watch and see the interaction between your app on your Apple Watch, and when you trigger something from the Apple Watch, what it does on your iPhone and things like that. And it comes bundled with Xcode, which is amazing. And it can simulate camera, GPS, and more things that devs need for testing. So simulators are very useful for testing your app whilst you're making it. Once you've tested your app on a simulator, you're probably going to want to test it on a physical device. This is just to make sure your app actually behaves the way you want it to when you're physically using it. You want to check that the hardware specifications that you're setting your app at is actually going to work with that type of device as well. And for example, if you're making a game and you've specified the lowest specs, you might actually want to check those lower specs to make sure that the performance is enjoyable. You can also test stuff like push notifications, haptics, an actual camera for more accurate testing. For example, if you have some sort of camera filters and things like that. And it reveals issues that you won't see in a simulator, like memory management and heat management as well, again, for more for gaming. That's it. And you can run it directly from Xcode on your device, as I said, without needing any cables or anything, which is also really neat. And finally, if you're running a really big application, a big development team, and you have lots of core users, you can use a thing called TestFlight, which directly lets you beta test an app or a new version of an app for iOS. And what it does is it allows users to sign up to TestFlight, and then you can push new builds or apps to their TestFlight account so that they can download that beta version and test it for a little bit. And it shares a lot more information that you normally wouldn't see, stuff like crash reports and user feedback and user interactions and stuff like that, which you probably won't be able to see in the real world. But in TestFlight, you can see a lot more of that because the users are accepting that they are testers and this is just for test purposes. So it supports up to 10,000 external testers, and it's great for that larger group size testing if you have a very important big app. And those are all the tools that I use to create iOS applications. If you enjoyed this video, then please check out the 6 things I learned when I released my iOS app to the App Store. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.